2020 Recovery Task Force meeting, calling it to order at 4 p.m. this afternoon. Again, I want to express my gratitude and appreciation for your willingness to serve on this task force. Meeting virtually has given us an opportunity to come together to discuss the city's strategies on how we can reopen. And because we can't meet in person, it is valuable to be able to see your faces as we hear presentations and have discussions. So I am encouraging everyone with a camera, and we will give Mr. Fall an exemption since we know he doesn't have one. Please make sure you leave the camera on during the entire duration of the meeting. Turning it on and off can be distracting. So now I'd like to take the roll, and please unmute and say here when I call your name. Jason.
Here.
Taking that as a here. Marisol. Mike.
I'm here.
Thank you. Nina.
Here.
Pavel.
Here.
Sam. Trish.
Here.
Thank you. Grace.
Here.
Thank you. Shashi.
Here.
Thank you, Sashi. We do have some excused absences this afternoon. Brookie Scholl, Janine Sanders, and Marlene will not be joining us today. And also wanted to let everybody know who the staff are that are online today. We have City Administrator Wally Bobkowitz, who's going to be presenting later on this afternoon. Economic Development Manager Jen Davis-Hayes, always available for questions since most of what you are helping with is part of her work. And managing the meeting for us is Executive Assistant Joanne Biscara. So the first item on the agenda this afternoon is the approval of the minutes from June 25th, 2020. And is there any objection to approving the June 25th, 2020 meeting minutes, which were provided in the online agenda? Just going over to the chat box. I'm not seeing anything. Hearing no objection, the minutes are approved as presented. Joanne, has anybody signed up to speak this afternoon?
No, Mayor Polly, no one has, but we do have a call-in user on the line with us today.
Would it be appropriate to have them identify themselves so we know who is joining us? I believe the user you're looking at is phone number 206300.
Steve, we're just listening.
Steve, that's fantastic. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it very much. We do not have any reports for this meeting, so we're going to move right into our agenda items. And first up is the COVID-19 impacts on the Cougar Mountain Zoo. We have Jared Munzer today with us, the director of Cougar Mountain Zoo, and I had a great opportunity during the early days of the closure to get to meet with Jared and hear about plans for reopening. So I'm really glad he could join us today. And Jared, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Polly, and thank you everyone for allowing me to come on this meeting and tell you a little bit about what the zoo's been doing during this time, and how a unique operation like us is faring right now. First, I'll start with a little history about the zoo. I'm sure most of you are familiar with us. We've been here since 1972. It was founded as part of the private school that was located right next door to us. Until 1990, the zoo operated with zero mandatory admission for entry. It was all donation-based. If you wanted to come in and felt like giving a quarter, you got to come in and see what we had here. In 1990, the founders handed the zoo over to the Zoological Society of Washington, which was granted status as a Washington nonprofit and granted federal status as a 501c3 at the same time as well. 1990 to 2018, the zoo operated on the same land that it's on now under a lease agreement. During the majority of that time, due to lack of finances and unsteady fiscal status, the zoo did not pay lease for the majority of those 29 years. It wasn't until 2018 where the zoo had seen a continuous level of fiscal stability, and the Zoo and Society was actually able to maintain complete operational overhead So that was a really good turning point for us. So you can kind of see or imagine how an event like this has really impacted us and set us back quite a bit. So as far as the coronavirus is concerned, things started here for us very early March, late February. One of the first steps that we took was to begin posting things around the zoo, basically letting people know that we are aware of what's going on, steps that we're taking to help make everybody feel safe should they decide to come to the zoo. We increased sanitizing protocols, cleaning, and a lot of that's things that we have to do anyway under requirements from the USDA and public health. So it really wasn't a big ask for us to do that. It wasn't anything outside of what we can normally handle. So it was just a matter of making sure people felt safe, felt like they were making a good decision by coming here to the zoo. It was kind of the first step of what I would call don't panic yet, get ready. So we knew attendance was gonna be hit. We just didn't know how bad it was going to get hit. And I believe during March, while we were still open, attendance ended up being down 74% from the year prior. So for us, that's where the majority of our funding comes from. We do have some donors, but the majority of all our funding comes from the admission that people pay to come in and see the zoo. So knowing that we weren't going to be having visitors coming to the zoo, knowing that schools were canceling field trips, we weren't going to be doing all the outreaches that we normally have scheduled during this time, we started trying to think of ways that we could still maintain an educational presence, because that's our primary function here. So we set up a program where classes could do virtual presentations where they would basically do something similar to this, and we would go around the zoo and give presentations with the tigers, the cougars, anything that was easy for us to film like that. We announced that on March 9th, and we were completely filled up on it by the end of the week. We were actually exceeding our capacity for it. We had 3 keepers out doing these presentations at a time. And it was quite crazy for us, but it was really good. Then shortly after that rolled out, schools were closed. So that was not an option to do anymore. We started making some plans for an impending shutdown. At the end of February, seeing how things were starting to get crazy at the grocery stores. It was hard to get paper towels. It was hard to get bleach. Those are things that people use a little bit of at home, but not quite as much as we do here. I had to start guaranteeing sources for all of that so we could just take care of the animals. One of the things that a lot of people don't think about is how the animals get fed. Well, let me tell you, 6 months supply of food for our tigers, wolves, and cougars is 4.5 tons of meat. Takes about 4 weeks to get it shipped to us, and it gets shipped to us from out of state. So I started panicking about supply lines. If I was going to have a problem getting those trucks across the state lines to deliver us that meat, I would be in big trouble. So we started making plans with some local businesses, Issaquah, Honda, Kubota, and also the Grange. I knew they had loading equipment, forklifts, things like that. So our meat gets delivered to us on a big 18-wheeler, but it comes to us by way of a refrigeration warehouse that supplies grocery stores and Costco. And I was anticipating a backup and us not being able to get that. So these businesses stepped up and gave us a place to unload 4.5 tons of meat and delivered it for us. So that was very reassuring to put 6 pallets worth of frozen meat into a tiny freezer. That was, at that point, could breathe a little bit easier. March 20th, we started making staffing plans. One of our big issues is if there were to be, at that point, the shutdown was coming, how do I keep the animals fed? How do I keep them cleaned? We are federally obligated by the USDA to make sure these animals are well cared for. You know, all my staff is essential. I have 16 people on staff. We're not, the size operation that the Woodland Park Zoo is or Point Defiance. So every person that's here taking care of those animals needs to be able to show up And I also need to have backups for all those people in case somebody were to get sick. So we came up with letters and a whole badge system just in case there were going to be issues getting here. Thankfully, I was the only one that ever got pulled over by anybody trying to go to work. And the officer just gave me thumbs up and said, go take care of the animals. And that was it. So that was good. The governor fortunately listed our workforce as essential. So everybody was coming to work at that time that I could keep on. We actually reduced our payroll by 30% overall during the shutdown. I only had 3 of my staff on standby, and 3 of those other staff were on partial and unemployment. So they were still working here part-time hours, taking care of the animals. And then all of our management had reduced salaries during that time. We staggered department hours. So the bird department came in at one time, mammal department came in at another. Try to stagger the day, keep everybody spread apart from each other. Even though we're on 8.5 acres that are developed right now, we were trying to do our best to make sure people weren't crossing paths with each other unless it was absolutely necessary. March 25th was our last open day to the public. Everybody that came in was just thanking us for being open. They were glad they had somewhere outside to go, somewhere safe to take their families to before everything was getting closed. So we were grateful to be able to do that. But like I said, that was a tough month, just not knowing what was coming. And then when it finally came, how do we deal with a situation like this? So during the actual closure, let's call it closure number 1, March 26th to April 8th. The PPP attempt that we went through had failed. We applied on the first day, like many businesses had. Did not come through for us.
Jared, can you
yes.
define, since many of, Stephanie is definitely a business owner, and Pavel, but PPP, what kind of program was that? Who provided it? What were you trying to get?
The payment protection plan from the Small Business Administration, part of the CARES Act. So that would have covered all of our, well, not all of the payroll, but the majority of payroll for 8 weeks at that time, plus some expenses. It would have been a forgivable grant. So that was absolutely huge for us. Going into a closure, we're not like some businesses where we could cut costs, as far as maybe shortening up on certain supplies, everything like that. Our animal count didn't change. Our expenses were constant. So what our expenses are from month to month are right around 100,000. So it cost the zoo 100,000 plus to stay closed and just to take care of the animals. The majority of our expenses are payroll and then animal care, both which cannot be cut that much. So I did what I could everywhere, but we were still putting out quite a bit of money during the closure and not getting much in. So the PPP was something that we were going to rely on, at least to be able to keep the staff paid. We organized a fund drive during that first part of the closure. That brought in almost $30,000 across 2 months. So that's only about 38% of what our income should be across those 2 months. So we cut it pretty close every month, as far as expenses and income is concerned. But this was a big hit. Also, I had to deal with something that nobody else had to deal with, Tiger King. That was fun. Sorry. At the end, I'll take questions, but I'm not answering questions about Tiger King. Another thing that we had to deal with was staff morale. The zoo is a very fun place to be. Everybody who works here enjoys being here. They enjoy taking care of their animals. They enjoy teaching the public about their animals. But when you take that aspect out of it, it's kind of an empty place, even as full as it is with the life around here. So we changed our approach to the virtual classroom program, and we called it Zoo to You, where we put out videos twice a week, every week. It featured all the different keepers in the zoo, basically gave everybody something outside of their normal job to prepare for, something different to break up the day. And that was a huge thing for us. And I'll go through it after I go through the rest of this. But it showed, it actually greatly increased our exposure to the public, and I think put us in a much better spot than we would have been for opening. So that was.
Jared, I'm going to jump in here for a second. This is Mayor Polly. We've allotted 30 minutes for you. And while I am like hanging on the edge of a cliff, listening to you go day by day, I want to allow at least 10 minutes for folks to ask questions. So what I would love is if you would take the entire script that you wrote up and send it as an attachment to Joanne so that she can send it out and make sure, because I'm going to ask you to give like the Cliff Notes version so that they get to ask you questions, because I can see them all moving around and I think they have some questions for you.
It gets much more straightforward now. So eventually we did get our PPP, and after talking to some other people, Rob from Village Theater included, I actually consider us pretty fortunate to get that PPP in the later stages when they changed everything. We're actually able to stretch that much farther. We're able to get 3 months or so of payroll out of it, which is fantastic for us, considering that we're actually able to open for about a month and a half during having payroll covered by that. So that was really good. We did apply for the SBA disaster loan and got that. However, it came through a little late. We had already burned through all of our reserves just maintaining the animal care during those 2 months. Prior to opening, I got in touch with Mayor Polly and Jen, and we had a meeting here, went over my plan to have the zoo open. And they were able to get us a sit down with the governor's office and actually went over the plan with them, got everything approved, and bam, when opening was allowed, we were able to open on June 8th. The mayor was actually the first person through the gate, greeted the first families that came in, took photos, and it really meant a lot to have that support. So thank you again for that. We reached out to King 5 prior to reopening. Just trying to get some sort of foothold, because we didn't know what kind of attendance we were going to have. And it's that balance of trying to attract people, but not attract too many people all at the same time. So we got some great press on that opening day, and that was real fortunate for us. As far as how this has impacted us number-wise, our expenses typically over a 3-month period will total anywhere from 250 to 300,000, depending. So normal income would cover this and allow approximately 20,000 or so on top of that. Our income during March, April, and May. March was 43% of the year prior. April and May, 19%. Payroll initially was reduced 26%, then it went down. I ended up reducing 41%, so 30% overall. Attendance post-opening. Actually, Joanne, you wouldn't mind playing that video real quick. It's only 40 seconds, I believe. So this is just a quick highlight of the educational videos we were putting out there during the shutdown.
Are we able to get that to play? Who's got screen control, Joanne? Is that you right now? And you're on mute. Hi,
Okay,
and
I could not get that to work. And I
That's
was
all right.
showing that, sorry about that. We tested it, it worked. I apologize, I don't know what's happening right now. I will send this video to all of the task
Oh,
members following this meeting.
thank you. I think
Okay.
that's fantastic. Jared, is there anything else you wanted to add after the video? Because I have 4 or 5 people lined up to ask you questions.
Oh boy. Okay. So actually, you know, I wanted to just kind of give a picture of what we're looking at after we were finally able to open. Our attendance since reopening is about 60.9% of what it was last year. So we're seeing about a 40% decrease in our attendance, and it's doable for now. But it's not something that's going to be sustainable at all. In the event that we should roll backwards, this is going to spell trouble for us big time. We're eager for the advancing of the stages, so we can safely allow more people to come back. But the way we're operating right now, we're steady. We're not overly busy. Everybody's real appreciative to be here. We see a lot of comments about how safe people feel walking around here with the open space and the cleanliness. But ultimately, it's just not going to last for us. And that's that.
Jared, thank you. First, I want to do a little business. I forgot to introduce 2 of our alternates that are here this evening. Stephanie Solomon and Ron Fall have joined us, and since that time, one of our regular members, Sam, has also joined. So thank you all 3 for being here as well. First up for questions, Nina Milligan.
Hi, thanks, Mayor Polly. This is Nina Milligan. Thank you, Jared, for your presentation. That was wonderful. I learned so much about the zoo this time. I've lived here for about 15 years, and you've just given me a lifetime of information. I've visited, but never knew so much. Thank you. I had questions about revenue. I think I understood you to say that admissions was most of your revenue, but while you were talking, sorry, no disrespect, I was just filling in the gaps. I was looking up about membership. So I wanted to ask you about what percentage of your revenue is membership and how you want to develop that. And then the other thing I wanted to ask was remind me what your corporate status is. Are donations and membership considered charitable contributions? And I will mute for the answer.
Okay. So the answer to the first part of your question, membership does make up quite a large portion of our revenue. Year to date in 2019, memberships would have brought in over $20,000 at this point to the zoo. Our membership fees are fairly reasonable compared to some of the other zoos. It's actually very economical for a family of 4 to become a member here. And we set it up that way so it's attainable for people across all different levels. For 2020, year to date, we've done $3,600 in memberships. So the forecast for that over the course of the year is not promising. So we've done 17.5% of last year's take on the membership up to this point. As far as our status, we are a 501c3, so donations are considered charitable contributions.
Thank you, Jared. Next up, we have Sam. Sam, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mayor Polly, and thank you, Jared. I have 2 quick questions. So one is, as far as reserves go, how many months of reserves do you like to maintain usually? That's number one. The second thing is, I probably will apologize for this. I didn't get a chance to read up on the debrief or the agenda, but I wonder, I'm probably missing some context on the presentation. Was it mainly to have some asks presented to this panel, or was this more of a use case story, if you will, of how one of our local businesses are operating in these times?
I'll take the first question. We've invited both Jared and Rob Hunt from the Village Theater to tell you their stories. There is no particular ask here today, more information about how businesses have worked their way through the different progressions from being shut down to partially coming back, or in the case of the theater, not coming back yet. And so it's more to educate you and get you to thinking as a group about what ideas we might want to consider to help businesses as they navigate through, but there isn't an ask today. And Jared, the second question is for you.
Okay, in answer to your question regarding the reserve status, I have greatly rethought that approach now, seeing as that now we're dealing with something like this. I stepped into this role as director 4 years ago. I'm a relatively young director in this industry, so for me to jump in and ever think I would ever have to deal with something like this, I would have been crazy to think that. So, but what we always tried to maintain was cash reserves about 2.5 months. We have some other things to fall back on, but they're not readily available like cash reserves. It would take some time for things like that. But yeah, 2.5 months, and those were exhausted.
Thank you, Jared. Jason, you had a question.
Thank you, Mayor Polly, and thank you, Mr. Munzer. As a citizen of Issaquah, the zoo is one of the great treasures, and I believe it's actually a treasure for our city. And it's an amazing place, great education, like I said, a lot of fun, and I hope the good times will come back. 2 quick questions. You had mentioned that being on social media and doing things like that you had seen something that you guys had never really tried. Are you guys going to try and exploit that for the future? I imagine you would. And what are you guys going to do to make your footprint online bigger than it is now in order to help you? And then the second question, when a pandemic originally hit, we had heard about all these herds and livestock that had been culled because they had nowhere to go. Is there any way that your supply chain, if there is another outbreak, would be able to possibly use these cold herds versus just unfortunately slaying them and putting them into the ground? Mm-hmm. That's my question.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, the first question, as far as the social media, we've never maintained a large presence on social media. One of the primary reasons for that is because of the negative attention that can come out there from various organizations regarding zoos, aquariums, anything that deals with animals. It is a very sensitive subject for some people. So when we did it, it was always scattered here and there. And then about a year and a half ago, I brought somebody on board to exclusively handle that and try to ramp it up because I know there's a good way to do it. And it was by pushing educational value and material out there. We did that mostly through just regular posted posts, I guess. Sorry, I'm not the one who's good at that. So we were doing that, and we were seeing our Instagram and Facebook, slowly on the rise from what it had been. And then when we started with these videos, they just took off. We experimented a little bit with some of the paid sharing of the posts. And again, I don't know how it works, but it worked. It expanded our footprint greatly, expanded our reach. One of the tricky things for us is finding out who our target audience is. We know as people who they are, that's the easy part, but where are they coming from? And that's always been difficult for us. So any way that we can find that would help us make that footprint that much larger, and be able to attract visitors, because we know when the visitors are coming to us, we don't have a lot else to offer aside from the animals and the educational experience. There's no food here on grounds. So when people come here, and they're asking where the burger stand is, we point them downtown, all the restaurants down there. So, we know if we can expand our footprint, it's good for everybody. So I'm hopeful that we can work on that. And then as far as the herds that are being culled, I think absolutely. If there's a way that it's done where it can be harvested for animal consumption, then absolutely you'll see not just us, but a lot of zoos will be jumping at that. As far as where our meat comes from, it's out of state, and it gets there by way of somewhere else. So if there's a big enough disruption in the supply chain, it could be real bad for us. But we do have relationships with some of the local grocers. Actually, Fisher's Meats, they donate a bunch of meat to us and some money every year. So we know in a pinch, we can always get down there and get a little bit to get by, but not 4.5 tons.
Thank you, Jared. We're pushing up against our time, but it looks like we have 2 more questions. I'm hoping they're quick ones. So let's see. We'll start with Shashi, and then Sam, you're going to get to close us out with the last question. Shashi.
Thank you, Mayor Polly, and thank you, everyone. And Jared, wonderful information. I loved it. I have a few questions. Let me try to make it as short as possible. Number 1, I wanted to know the coronavirus status of your animals and the staff. Number 2, have you considered transferring some animals to better equipped places or safari? They're happier there. And number 3, that's not related to coronavirus. In case there's a disaster, we live in earthquake zone. What happens to the animals? Do they run around free and eat us or what? Just curious.
Thank you, Shashi.
If I could actually get you just clarify the first question, was that the status of the animals and the staff?
Yeah.
So as far as the status of our animals and the staff, all of our staff is back on board now. They're all back at their regular salaries per the requirements of the payment protection plan. We have about another half pay period where our salaries will be covered. And then if we need to explore anything after that, we're certainly going to. Status of the animals, for the most part, everything is great. We have a lot of animals here and something happens every day. So we're constantly dealing with something. We did unfortunately have one of our tigers pass during this time. So when I was talking about staff morale, that was certainly a big kick. But it's all unfortunately part of it.
Jared, before we go to the next answer, I think the question was, did any of the animals get coronavirus, or did any of your staff get coronavirus?
No and no.
Okay, great.
So the only reported cases of coronavirus in zoos were the tigers at the Bronx Zoo. As soon as we heard about that, which was actually a day after our tiger had passed here, we implemented stricter protocols, masks and gloves around the cats. And we still have those protocols going on now. After that tiger passed, we spent quite a bit of time on the phone with the laboratories, Department of Health and the USDA to find out what we needed to do and if we needed to be concerned about anything. And he wasn't exhibiting any symptoms, so it wasn't related.
Jared, I know the question about why the animals are in your zoo instead of in a natural place requires a little bit of a longer answer. I wonder if you could write a few paragraphs that Joanne would be able to circulate back, because you and I have talked about that extensively. The last question was the more emergency preparedness. So now you've dealt with a pandemic, but what about an earthquake when all the fences come down?
So we do have an emergency protocol plan that covers all. It covered everything you could think of except for a pandemic.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Why would you? At least to me, that's not what I think of when I think of an emergency in relation to the animals. It certainly is now. But yeah, we have emergency protocols in place. And I can actually guarantee you that tiger habitat is probably the safest area on this side of the mountain.
Okay. I'm going to go to Oh, thank you. I'm going to go to Sam to wrap us up. Last question, and then we'll be moving on to our next speaker. Sam.
Yep. Really quick question from me is Microsoft a corporate sponsor for you? Yes or no? And if not, I work for Microsoft. What is the best way for me to reach out to you?
Microsoft is not a corporate sponsor for us. We have done some things with them in the past. I believe it was quite a number of years ago. And I would certainly love that. Should I just provide my email to Joanne and have it passed along?
Yeah, Joanne has your email and Sam's, and we'll definitely get you two together. Sam, that's a great question. Thank you so much. So we'll put that on our to-do list. Fantastic. Jared, I just wanted to tell you what I've learned about working with you over the last few months is I am just so impressed with the way you are continually able to adapt to rapidly changing conditions, how you had to rethink things and think forward just every few days, and also your ability to think months out, knowing that the new measures you put in today were going to have to be modified again really quickly. You rethought out your logistics. I loved it that you used local resources like the Grange and Hanakabota. Thank you. Buy local. And I think you made a very clear case for how tight financing is for many nonprofits and companies before they got any CARES Act money or any loans arrived. But that was one-time money, and it may not be coming again for a while. So we have a ways to go until we are really going to see some sort of basis of financial stability for all of you. And I wanted to thank you for providing the opportunity for our community to get back outside and visit the beloved zoo. So thank you so much for joining us today. The next speaker we have today is Rob Hunt from the Village Theater. And Rob, I believe the theater has got a very different story to tell, so I'm going to hand it over to you to present the COVID-19 impacts on the theater. Rob.
Great, thanks very much, Mayor Polly, and thank you so much, Jared. That was great finding out, and I'm so grateful that somebody gets to actually do things, which is terrific, and you get people to come. So wonderful to hear. As I think many people know, the Village Theater has been here since 1979. Started out in our small theater down the street, which we now call First Stage. Built the Francis J. Gaudette Theater, our larger theater, in 1994. We opened it, and that's where our main stage programming is now, and the smaller theater is still used for new musicals development and for our youth program, which we call Kid Stage. And then we've also built a scene shop down the street, the Craig and Joan Watson Technical Studios, where we build all of our scenery. And just about a year and a half ago, we acquired an apartment complex on Dogwood that we house actors in, although there's nobody there right now. We were in the middle of our season, and March came along, and we basically had to shut everything down. We had She Loves Me running up in Everett, and it was just the close of that run, because we run all of our shows in Issaquah first and then move them up to Everett. It's the export business for Issaquah. And so we closed that down, and then we had a brand new musical called Hansel and Gretel and Heidi and Gunther, which was about to open, and on opening night, we basically closed the show, and both sets are still on stage, because turns out we couldn't bring any stage crew back to strike them, so they're still there. We were hoping that we could remount them and just continue on with those shows, because initially it was just a short period of disruption, but then it became a much longer one. So we have officially canceled those shows entirely. And we've seen the governor's plan. And of course, we're maybe in phase 4, although if you look at the details in phase 4, it includes social distancing. And that's a challenge for when you have actors on stage singing, which is a super spreader event, singing is. And so that makes it even more difficult to bring all of our folks back. We, in addition to closing those shows, we also had to cancel our gala, which is our annual fundraiser, which brings in close to $1 million for the theater. So that's also was a financial challenge for us. We in our closed shows, we gave the audience an opportunity to donate their tickets or receive a credit. And we're very fortunate that our audience does want us to survive and understands the need for funding. And so about half of the people have been donating their tickets and the other half have been asking for a credit. So that's been a good thing for us. But it doesn't necessarily solve our problems because we had actually invested most of the money into the shows that we cancel. So that money was already gone. We didn't have to pay the ongoing costs of the performances, but the upfront costs of building the shows and getting them up and running was already spent. We put together a committee of staff to plan our reopening, and we have a back to the office protocol, which we're implementing now in both Issaquah and Everett to with temperatures and all the things you need to do to get people to come into the office, and we're all wearing masks around the office and that kind of thing, and so that's ongoing. But the real question is when we can get back to actual performances. It's a big challenge. Actors Equity is our acting union, and they have hired an epidemiologist / ex-head of OSHA to define their back to work protocol for actors. That has not been defined as yet, and as I mentioned, the singing is a big question mark, and how this can be done on stage. There are a couple of theaters around the country that have been doing some outdoor performances with social distancing. That seems to be working. Of course, the audience coming into the theater is another question with social distancing, because right now, even with masks, you need the 6 feet separation. And so that would reduce our 500-seat theater to about 80 seats of actually people sitting there, which is a difficult economic challenge for us to proceed with. The Stagehands Union is also working on protocols for coming back, and as I said, we've got some scenery on stage. We're waiting to strike that. There's not much of a hurry since we don't have anything to put in its place at this point. But we are planning that and working with the Stagehands Union and also the Musicians Union, because of course people playing reed instruments and trumpets and things like that. There's various droplets that occur when that happens, and so that's another area that we're working with our unions to try to figure out, well, when can that happen? Of course, this is all happening on a national basis as well. Our industry group is the National Alliance for Musical Theater, and so we're working with them. We just had a town hall today talking about how everybody's doing, and it's everybody's adjusting their schedules and then readjusting their schedules and trying to figure out a plan for when things can actually happen again. As of now, we have been selling our 2020-21 season, but with the realization that the opening will have to be postponed. Our current thinking on that is that our opening, which was to be in September, will be more like late spring, May timeframe, when things will settle down to the point of people actually being able to go into the theater. We've been doing our own surveys of our audience to see, well, would people feel comfortable going back to the theater? And our audience has a shall we say, upper end average age, and so they're less comfortable than the 20-somethings in terms of going back into a closed space, and so we're factoring that into our planning process as we go forward. We did receive the PPE loan. As Jared mentioned, that it was good to get the second round where you knew more information about the real rules that they were going to have. We did only get the amount that we would be spending on payroll for the 8 weeks as originally defined. And so that was our contribution. It does look like that will be forgiven, given the current protocol, but that's what we got, was just the 8 weeks of our reduced staffing. We immediately had to lay off about 180 people from the 2 productions we had going, and we cut everybody's the rest of the salary staff. We cut salaries from anywhere from 10% at the lower salaries to 30% at the executive level salaries, to just keep everything going. We did receive the EIDL small business emergency loan, and that was helpful as well. But we had, at the time of the closure, that was at our relatively short shortage of cash during the year. We usually have a shortage during the early part of the year, and then we make it back. We make the money back up as we sell the next year's season tickets. And so we did have, we had maxed our line of credit at the time that we had to close all of our productions. So we've been working on that basis. We were selling season tickets. We did start just before, we announced our new season just before the closures. And we're grateful that people, even though in this time of uncertainty, they still wanted to come. And we have sold 9,000 season tickets for next season when that should be able to occur. And so we're grateful for all of those people.
Rob, 9,000 season tickets out of a possible total of how many season tickets?
We typically sell about 18,000.
Okay.
We've gotten up to over 19,000, but 18,000 has been where we've hovered. So we're at about 50% of where we would be otherwise. And that's actually a pretty strong place. The downside of that is that that's money for a season that we have to produce in the future, that we kind of need to survive at this point, just to keep going. So we're grateful for all of our subscribers. We did do a emergency fundraiser, and with a matching grant from some of our patrons. They donated $100,000 to match individual contributions, which were in excess of prior year's contributions, and that raised us about $250,000. So that was very helpful. We've been able to keep going with our youth education programs. We have online classes. That's been very well received. Fortunately, the schools pre-trained everybody to get used to being online for their classes. And we have a dedicated group of instructors that are really in tune with this and have made an entertaining and exciting set of camps and classes for the kids. So they are involved in that. We did receive a National Endowment for the Arts grant to keep our artistic staff on board for 6 more months, and we're grateful for that. So we're keeping them on through the end of the year, part-time, not full-time, but we do have some money for that's been happening. So we're going after money wherever we can just to make it through and handle all the challenges that we've got. We're trying to budget right now for this late start and probably going with the season that we've announced over 2 fiscal years instead of just 1, because we've got to allow for some wiggle room in case something else happens with COVID. So we can't just assume that we can open up with a tight kind of a schedule that we've been operating in the past. So that's another challenge for us. And in addition, one of the unique things about a lot of the nonprofits is that we're self-insured for unemployment. And that is a challenge right now because we have to reimburse the state through a trust for the unemployment costs. Now, we don't have to cover the extra $600 that people get from the federal government. And there's some things in motion to reduce our costs from that, but we're just getting hit with that now with estimates from the trust of almost $250,000 in unemployment. So that's a challenge for us as well, because all of these people are out of work, and that comes back for us. So we're working on that. There's a lot of activity statewide with the other nonprofits that are in the same boat to try to get some state support from that, and of course federal support as well. But right now we're not sure how that cash flow. Originally, the Department of Labor said, well, the nonprofits have to pay it all, and then they'll wait for reimbursement from the state and for the half that we're supposed to get reimbursed. But that, of course, would be very, very difficult from a cash flow perspective. Just want to thank the city for all of its support along the way. We're grateful. Arts Commission has been supportive, and we're happy to be in Issaquah. We hope that we can have theater before too awfully long, but it's a challenge to plan right now because there's a lot of uncertainty as to when actors could actually rehearse together, let alone perform in front of an audience that's sitting together. So those are all questions still. We've been working with the regional institutions to propose a protocol for the governor's office, but it all ties in with the county requirements for when people can gather. And that's sort of what we're up against right now. And I know you guys have a time frame, so love to open it up for any questions or other things that you might have. I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Yes, Rob, we have some questions for you, but I also wanted to offer up as mayor that from my position, I am more than willing to advocate with the governor and the state anytime you need, just as we tried to with Jared, make sure that we push any lever we can when you have a common sense plan that can help you move through a stage. And it's healthy, it's safety, and it's great for the community. So please loop me in when you think a letter from the mayor might just get something over the edge that you're working on, because we so appreciate how hard this is for you. Great. I'm going to move to questions, and we're going to start with Nina, followed by Mike.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor. Nina Milligan here. Mr. Hunt, thank you for your presentation. Love coming to your theater. I have two questions, so I'll just blurt them out and then leave them to you. The first one has to do with the gala. You said you had an emergency fundraiser, but how do you intend to replace your gala? And is there something else that you could be doing before going a full cycle? And then the other had to do with, you inspired me to think about how resilient and what kind of change, you've got a long planning period, but what kind of changes can you implement that would allow you to take advantage of different venues, whether they be outdoor or another kind of theater? And then the other has to do with the target audience. If the older target audience continues to feel uncomfortable going out for God knows how long, what can you do to attract a younger audience, or use your other programming to, move those numbers to a different audience? Those are my two.
Great, Nina.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, our gala, the emergency fundraiser was just calling people up and asking for money. That's how that one worked. But we do have a lot of wine that was pre-donated for our gala, which we're going to have a online live auction to auction that off and to try to get some of the money. And we're also asking people, we do a raise the paddle for new musicals at our gala. And so we're calling the folks that have given money for that in the past and seeing if they'll continue to do that even without the gala. So that's what we're doing for the gala. As far as our target audience and our various venues, our new musicals is an area with the sort of least restrictions. In musical theater, most of the big old musicals also have movies that have been done for them, and those movie companies have tied up all the rights for broadcasting. So in terms of the kind of online things that people can do, we're looking to our new musicals for that, where we work directly with the writers. And so we're working on some of that. And we know that we will be doing some of that development process, like readings and that sort of thing for our Village Originals program online so that people can observe and watch a reading and that kind of thing. However, nationally, so far, there's not a lot of revenue associated with the online distribution of that product line. As far as our target audience, it's a constant struggle for theater, especially musical theater, to develop that younger audience. It's something that's always on our mind and is even more on our mind now. New musicals is a way into that audience, and that's where we're attracting a lot of the younger folks right now. And so we'll continue to work that angle. We're certainly working on discounts. We have a discount for younger people and that kind of stuff that we'll be continuing. And also our youth education program, bringing the younger families in with the kids and having them get happy with going to the theater and making that part of their lifestyle. So, thank you for the question.
Thank you, Nina. Mike, you are up next.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. Nina and I think alike. Those were very similar to my questions. So thanks. Great answers to that. Maybe a little more narrow question then, related to kind of thinking ahead about kind of the continued transformation and even revenue sources. I know you talked about kind of the youth education side and trying to develop more interest in future, theater goers. One way to do that may be to work more closely with the with the schools and other educational institutions to help to do that. And you have, talented people that work with the theater that could help to do that. But just as one example, but are there other examples where you've explored what are some other revenue generating alternatives that may even be short term to help you get through what will be probably a longer period of struggle that you're going to face based on the nature of this business than maybe restaurants or retail, et cetera. So what kind of thinking longer term about kind of how do you cover the gap?
Yeah, well, we've been doing a lot of thinking, obviously, on how to do it. I've talked to Jared, in fact, about going up to the zoo and doing some performances up there, and we've looked at possibly some of our cohorts around the country have done drive-in musicals.
Yeah.
Drive-in theater. So we've looked around for those possibilities. Of course, you have to go to Kent or something to do that right now, but it is on our mind. There's some amphitheaters around and that kind of thing that we've been looking toward. For the large musicals, having actors perform together and on stage and rehearse is still a challenge that we're waiting for the protocols from the union to figure out, okay, exactly how's that going to be done. We're not feeling that our position is to jump out ahead of everybody and be the first on that one, because there's going to be people in other parts of the country where the audience can come in earlier that will work some of these things out with the union. And so we're watching for that to happen so that we can make the best choices as we move forward.
That is great. Thank you, Rob. Sam, you have a question.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly and Rob. Two of my questions are already answered with online and summer camp. I'll ask different questions. So number one, how many months of reserves do you maintain? And number two is, how do you plan to adapt to two things, right? One is generational changes, because the younger generation is obviously a little different, have different preferences. And in the event of another pandemic, because I don't know, my suspicion is this is not the last one.
No, and both of those are very concerning for us for sure. Our reserves right now we probably have 6 months worth of reserve, but it's all next year's money that we don't we don't have any shows to build to spend it on, so it's not really reserves. We have about 2 months reserve that's normally that we have in abeyance, and that's pretty fast used up in this kind of an environment. As far as our transition to the younger audience, again, our new musicals is where we draw them in. That's where we get our more cutting edge work, and we've been doing quite a lot to attract those audiences. Also, things like Hamilton attract. When we did Lin-Manuel Miranda's In the Heights, that was a way in for a lot of people. So we're doing a mixture of some of the classics, which we find that the kids still like, the young people still like, as long as they're mixed in with the with some newer things and some more cutting edge things that they can dig their teeth into. One other thing that is a transition that we feel like we have to make in terms of the pandemic and future pandemics. A lot of the other theaters in the country operate on a 40 to 50% contributed income. We've traditionally been able to work with a 20 to 25% contributed income. We realize now that we're going to have to be changing that model and to get more contributed income for our work. It's been a challenge being out in the suburbs. It's not most people think that the big arts organizations are in the city, and those are the ones that people want to support with their contributions. So we've recognized that that's a change that we have to make in order to be able to handle these kinds of things. Oops, can't hear you.
I don't care if we do these meetings for a year. I'm never going to learn where the stupid mute button is. Okay, our last question for Rob will come from Shashi.
Thank you so much. I love theater too, although I'm not able to go. But I was wondering, we do have that generation thing. I noticed mostly seniors people go to that theater. Could you do something for school children, like plays on Shakespeare's plays or something that will attract educational set of students and their parents along with them, that we could bridge the gap between the two generations?
Well, we do have a program that we call Pied Piper, which is we bring school kids to the shows. We do it here in Issaquah, and we do it at Maidenbauer Center in Bellevue and also up in Everett, where school kids are bussed in during the school hours. And we work with the school districts to tie the programming that we do there in with the curriculum. So we do that and bring them in. But I think what you are looking for is something that we continually try to do with kids, with our youth ed program, and trying to get parents and kids to come together to things and offer incentives and all of that. So I think, it's really a valid point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shashi. Rob, I wanted to thank you for coming today. One of the things that I think you explained really clearly was how your revenue options, like the fundraisers, have just been dramatically impacted. I mean, that's a message I don't think we can say often enough. I work with other nonprofits in town, and it's stunningly stark about the revenues that are coming in for this year. You're also in one of the hardest hit industries. This is maybe one of the last industries to come back, and everybody was hoping that with 3 months of flattening the curve, we'd move through the phases quicker, and it did not work out that way. So just, you really are suffering in one of the industries that is impacted significantly. You're also having to deal with consumer confidence. wanting to get people back inside a building, sitting next to each other, even in masks, at some sort of scale that you can still afford to keep running. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a huge challenge just for the city itself. I'm just not sure when, if ever, we'll have everybody back in the building. But that's the way you need to do it. You need to have them back in the building. I was thrilled to hear you talk about an outdoor theater or a musical theater drive-in. Those were a couple of things I sketched down. We are going to have to think way outside of the box for a while about how to give people some things that are enjoyable in a different way than what they've done before. And I am 100% on board with you is states are moving through things at different times. Let's watch somebody try something. Let's watch them work out the bugs and then jump on it and put it in place. I thought that was a brilliant idea. I'm really glad that you brought that one up. So thank you, Rob, and thank you, Jared. You're more than welcome to stay through the end of the meeting. The last speaker today is going to be our city administrator, and he is going to be giving a work plan update. Handing it over to Wally.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the task force. Good afternoon. We have been working hard on a lot of other fronts dealing with the COVID-19 crisis, and we want to talk a little bit about some of those today. Jen Davis-Hayes, our Economic Development Manager, is with us. Jen, could you talk a little bit about the business grant program that we have up and running, the streetery and the next steps there? And then we could also talk about the Issaquah Loyal promotion campaign. So Jen, take it away.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Great to hear from our two gems in our community from the Cougar Mountain Zoo and Village Theater. So we have a lot going on, and I thank you all for your input in past meetings. Right now, our small business response grant, which is up to $10,000 for a total of $50,000 total, will distribute for businesses with less than 25 employees, FTE employees. That is, as of 3 o'clock today, we had 132 applications. So please share with any business that applications are available and due on are due July 15th by noon. So we reached out via our business e-news and our social media. We're now posting some Facebook ads. The grants will be announced at the beginning of August. And then we have another grant opportunity, which we're going to work on with the Economic Vitality Commission at their July 15th meeting. And Pavel actually was involved in our committee to do some brainstorming about a reinvention grant. So working with businesses to support the reinvention things that they have to do in order to respond to COVID-19. And so that will be a total fund of $50,000. And again, we'll work on that criteria and establish that with the Economic Vitality Commission, and we'll launch it by the beginning of August, we believe. One more thing under business assistance and services that you may have heard before is that we talked about encouraging our businesses to contact us if they're interested in using our park spaces. And so we're actually have worked on that, and actually will be waiving fees for business use of the parks if they are not creating undue costs. So, if they create this big extra garbage pickup or whatever that is. But we're currently working with 3 businesses to explore that. So 2 music instruction businesses that want to do concerts for their smaller concert, again, in phase 3, and then a spin cycle business here in Issaquah. So that is available to any Issaquah-based business. So we encourage you, again, to have them contact myself directly, and we'll get the details and make sure that we help them out. The thing you might have seen a lot in social media and even in person was the streetery. So we closed down Front Street, or actually opened it up for business operations Fridays from 2 p.m. till Saturday at 10 p.m. for the last 2 weekends, June 26th and over the 4th of July. About 10 restaurants participated, and all 10 of those had increased sales. Some of them had doubled or tripled. One had Salmon Days sales levels for the first day of the event, or the thing, the closure. Businesses like Subway and Domino's, they were less successful because their businesses are based on actually quick and easy access in and out. We looked at traffic, and most of it was diverted to Newport and some to Sunset. It did not create overload for those roads. And so we actually, that was a 2-week pilot. We decided to put a pause on it for the next 2 weeks because of the rising cases around COVID-19. And then it'll also allow us to do some more in-depth gathering information about the impact, and we're going to present to council on the 20th about this streetery, and we'll make a decision at that time if we will continue it through the end of the summer. We are prepared to do that if our public health cases go in the right direction, and businesses are very interested. We have a few more restaurants that we're interested in open up in the next few weeks as well and join us on the street. You may remember that we did some temporary changes to our permitting process. We reduced the permit process and waive the fee for outdoor business use. So if you want to do outdoor seating, if you want to do something in the parking lot with your retail or your waiting room, we've had 6 applicants to date that have gone through that process. And we've also waived the process and fees for A-frame signs. So businesses can quickly adjust to the curbside pickup, the instructions of how to enter the business, what the new operation is going to be without having to come to City Hall and get a permit during this time. The exciting thing that we will be kicking off in the next few weeks is the Issaquah Loyal, the Buy Local campaign. So we kind of did a little teaser, shared the images that we'll be using for that. But in the next coming weeks, you'll see banners over Front Street. You'll see posters in downtown businesses throughout the city and on a downtown kiosk, street pole banners in the Highlands. We had actually in the Highlands a Connections print ad. We'll have that for 2 months. We're going to do lots of social media and e-news blasts. And then we've also created static clings that businesses can put in their windows, but more importantly, residents or anybody can put them in their cars to show their Issaquah pride. So when those are, we're in the process now of ordering and getting those in. And so we're really excited to, in the next few weeks, again, starting to see that Issaquah Loyal image throughout the community. That's about it. That's it, but that's all I'll share for right now.
Madam Mayor, before we move on, if there's any questions for Jen?
Let's see. Shashi was the last one to sign in, but I think that was for the prior speakers. So Sam has a comment, actually. Sam.
Jen, quick question here. Did you mean 50,000 or did you mean 500,000 for the limit?
Okay, so I might have maybe a little confusing. So we have 2 grant pools. One is for a total of $500,000, and those will be grants up to $10,000. And that is currently open now, and it's on our website. If you go to the COVID website, on the left-hand column, you can click on the business resources, and you can get to the grant application there. The secondary grant pool is $50,000 total. We have not set criteria or grant limits yet, so that will be decided by the EDC, and we'll implement that soon after that meeting.
Thank you, Jen. I'm going to jump in here with a quick comment. I'm not sure if the Recovery Task Force is aware that and Wally can correct me if I'm wrong, that the city received $1.1 million in CARES Act funding from the state, and that I made a proposal to the City Council to break it into several buckets. One was to pay some COVID-related bills that the city had to the tune of about $400,000. Second bucket was to invest $200,000 with some of our nonprofits for, food on the table, keep a roof over your head again, and then the last $500,000, Wally, Jen, 500. The last $500,000 is what Jen is referring to, which is an investment in our business community by setting up this grant program. So thank you for that, Jen. Shashi has a question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had a comment when you said we are closed now for 2 weeks, the streetery and those businesses. I would say keep it for 1 month because we will not know until 2 weeks anything. So maybe next week, by next meeting, we might know if some cases have come. My other suggestion is that everybody who's involved in this giving and receiving this kind of services should get tested as I mean, close to the time when they start, say, for example, we open for 2 weekends or 2 days. So the next time when we open again the street eatery, one day before or the latest possible, they should give their sample for testing. And as soon as they're done with the thing, then within 2 weeks, they can get tested again. That might help us tracing a little bit in case it's due to that.
Thank you very much, Shashi. I am not seeing any other comments at this time. I go back over to City Administrator Bobkowitz.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Jen, for your update. A couple of other pieces of information, and certainly we're ready to answer any other questions that you may have. The task force has been very concerned about the public distribution of masks. As you know, we received many thousand masks from King County. We have been doing that. We tried having a serve yourself opportunity at City Hall. That did not prove to be very good because, unfortunately, some residents took us a little too literally, and we had large quantities of masks leave in a very short period of time. So what we've done instead is have staff tables. We did some time last week at City Hall and at Blakely Hall up at the Issaquah Highlands. We're continuing to do that. Over this week, we're also going to be handing out masks at the farmers market, something that this task force specifically suggested. So we will continue to make that available, but we will do it with staffed tables rather than just serve yourself. The city has emergency response volunteers called our CERT team. They've been very instrumental in helping hand out masks. I know that the Issaquah Chamber of Commerce today had the treasure van from Amazon come with a variety of PPE equipment for local businesses, and our CERT volunteers were there to help the Chamber of Commerce today with that distribution. So we'll continue to work on the masks. I think as the task force heard at its last meeting, masks, social distancing, and hand washing remain the primary things, and certainly this task force recommended at the last meeting that we do all we can on social media, be as I wanted to say the word cute, but that's not appropriate. It would be as accessible as possible to people, and so we've tried to do that with our postings. Another piece of this concern to the task force has been community engagement, and Mayor Pauley had a interesting idea. We wanted to have a 4th of July parade, and perhaps, Mayor, you can talk about what happened with our 4th of July parade to you event that we had last weekend.
It was fantastic. One of the things when I was thinking about running for mayor was trying to turn the idea on its head, where we always ask the community to come to us to enjoy an event or have their say or have their piece. And really, government needs to find a way to go to where people are. So when we knew that we were not going to be able to host our event as normal, great idea. How about we just go out to the neighborhoods? Because most people were not able to travel over the weekend. They could set a few lawn chairs out on their front lawn, though, and everybody is safe. Everybody has masks. So we put together a parade that consisted of, I'm trying to think of what the first vehicle was. Oh, police car.
Police car.
Started out with a police car with all the lights flashing, followed by one of our utility vehicles, followed by a snowplow, which was my favorite, mayor in a decorated car, 6 of the 7 council members in decorated cars. I think we had some music. We had, trying to think, coming at the rear, we had an aid car and our articulated fire truck. And at a pace that was probably too fast, because we've never done this before, we went through a series of neighborhoods: Old Town, Squack Mountain, Newport West, Tallis, a little piece of Cougar Mountain, South Cove, the Highlands, Overdale, the Highlands, and back to Old Town. And if you ever needed anything to fill your soul up, the smiling faces were astounding. By the time we got back to the end of our parade and all the council members got off, they were walking on cloud 9. It was amazing. So I'm not sure that it's a new thing or anything at all, but it was a different thing. And it really brought some joy and happiness to people in town. And so it was fantastic. I thank all of our staff who worked on it to get it ready, and to my husband for helping me do decorations. It was super fun. So an idea again of how are we going to think out of the box during this next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to find some ways to safely bring great things to the community again. So thank you for letting me share that, Wally.
You bet. And then finally, in the area of human services, as the mayor mentioned, the council allocated $200,000, our $1.1 million CARES Act allocation from the state of Washington to human services grants. We're continuing to work with those agencies. The CARES Act has lots of strings attached, and so some agencies are more able and nimble to deal with the reporting requirements than others, and so we've been working. The direction from the council was to work with those agencies and make allocations to agencies that could best spend it, mostly on food and shelter issues. And so we'll have an update for you soon about how that all works out. We're going back to the City Council on July 20th for a complete update, and we can share that update at your next task force meeting as well. So, Madam Mayor, those are the sort of the high-level reports that we have. I'll mention that for the task force's next meeting, we've asked the Issaquah Superintendent of Schools, Ron Thiele, to come. There was a lot of interest about school reopening and how students get comfortable wearing masks. And so Mayor Pauley reached out to Superintendent Thiele. He's happy to join us, so he'll be joining us for our next meeting in 2 weeks to talk about where the Issaquah School District is with opening, about mask wearing, and what we can do as a community to be supportive of the school district. So that's the single guest on the docket for next meeting.
Thank you, Administrator Bobkowitz. That's a huge single guest, though, because the way our community works, it's an integration of people going to work, students going to school, and without all these pieces being discussed in coordination, it just doesn't work. So that should be a very good conversation. That will be on July 23rd at 4 p.m. And before we leave, I just wanted to thank all of the task force members. You created the work plan, and we are working off your work plan. I feel like we're taking some really great steps. We have a lot more work to do, but I appreciate all the time and the creativity and the energy that you are providing. I have a couple members who would like to comment before the end. So Jason and Sam.
Well, thanks again, Mayor Pauley. And I didn't get the opportunity, but thank you, Mr. Hunt, for your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Pauley just mentioned about thinking outside the box. And maybe we've already done something similar. I don't know if we can help in terms of Mr. Hunt's operations because it's pretty large scale. What if there was something like a raffle booklet that was subsidized by the Issaquah city government to the tune of X amount of money, where it would be raffle, basically where citizens could get an opportunity to go to the zoo, an opportunity to go to Jack's, an opportunity to go here, there, everywhere. Places where, again, we take some of that money. The mayor had mentioned 7 buckets. I don't know if this has already been allocated. Again, just trying to think outside of the box because, as the mayor said, it's fun, but it's also different. And we're going to have to be a little bit different, probably at least for the next 12 months. So don't know if that's in the cards. Don't know if it's ever been in the cards, but something like a raffle booklet where, again, the city's already subsidized the cost. We can give it to these businesses to help them get through the tough times. And it'll also get people coming back through the doors again. And hopefully providing some of that self-confidence that people need in order to get back out there. So,
thank you, Jason. Everything is on the table. all ideas are welcome. Sam.
Thank you, Mayor Pauley. I have 2 questions. So number one is, if I'm not wrong, some of the commercial property owners have gotten some loan assistance from the banks. And if that is correct, I wonder if as a city we can do anything in terms of rent forgiveness for some of the small businesses. So it trickles down. So that's one. The second question was, are we doing anything specific in terms of emergency preparedness for a possible epidemic that might hit us in the future?
Thank you for the question, Sam. I think what I might do is give Jen an opportunity next time to come back and talk about how some of our larger landowners, like for shopping centers and others, what they've been able to apply for and how that has helped. I'm not sure that much of that has trickled down to those tenants within their building. That's a little bit more of a complicated story. So I'm going to give some homework to Jen on that. Wally, as far as city planning goes, I know that we already have an emergency response plan that we look at for varying emergencies, and we realized while we had some information for pandemic, now we have some practical information about what it's like to operate in a pandemic. And I know that we will obviously be taking lessons learned and updating our plan. But just looking forward to the fall, I would love to get your thoughts on, some of the stuff we hear out there is this could come back. This could come back stronger. And so how are we prepared for that and planning for that?
Thank you, Mayor. Great question. We work with our partners, first and foremost. We work with King County Health. They are the health agency in the city of Issaquah. And so we work with King County Health. We work with the state of Washington. I think that the slowing down of the phases is probably the single greatest thing that we can do to combat a second wave, and getting people feeling comfortable wearing masks, staying distance, and washing their hands. So, we're certainly committed to continue to share that message, following the lead of King County Health, following the lead of the state of Washington with that. We have an emergency coordinator whose job it is for us, the representatives, interfacing with the county and the state and the federal government as required on any kind of emergency. And so that position has been very busy working throughout these many months. But I think we're all in the same boat of wondering what's next. We're all in the same boat of, trying to deliver current services with less revenue, trying to be prepared for the next thing around the corner. It's just very difficult. And I think we're being as diligent as we can. I think, Mayor, your leadership in making sure the community is involved, that we have a forum for people to share concerns, is a big part of it. And, as we think, as your staff on the future of this task force, I think we thought initially maybe it was going to be a month or two. Here we are in July, and we're already thinking of ways to engage this task force into the fall at this point. I think it's a community effort to be prepared, but probably the most important thing, again, is to encourage our friends and neighbors to wear masks, social distance, and wash their hands, and do it at home, and do it at work, and do it when you're with other people outside your household. I mean, that's going to be the key. I mean, have been having discussions internally within the city government how it's important that our employees do this while they're at work, but it's also important that our employees do it when they're not at work, because anything that they may bring to the workplace, has a negative impact on all their coworkers. So, there's lots of messaging that we need to continue to work on as well. So we'll continue to keep the task force posted over the next few months as that work continues.
Thank you, Wally. I will tell you, this is one reason why mayors don't sleep well, because we think like Sam about, we've just gotten through one thing, and I would say I'd give us a fairly good grade for the way we shut down, and less than fair grade for the way we're opening up. But we're learning lessons along the way, and that is what we are doing. Is me in particular, I worry very much about being ready for the next thing, being ready for a different version of this virus. So top of mind. Thank you, Sam. You ruined my sleep for tonight. Let's go to Ron for the final question.
Hi, thanks, Madam Mayor. So this is, I don't know if you really call it a question, maybe a suggestion or an idea, like to Jason's point, thinking outside the box. For the Village Theater, have we thought about opening up the Lake Sammamish State Park, because they have the real estate to do an outdoor event? They have the ability to do social distancing, and because it's here now and we are at this point where the virus is somewhat controlled, although it's still starting to spread a little bit, but because it's summertime, the weather's here, can we do anything for the Village Theater to put on a production at the state park?
I think that's a great That is a great question, Ron. I think what we'll do is come back with some information on that. The state park is an absolute jewel for us who live close to it because of the amazing amount of open space. I'm not sure if we've had conversations with state park staff. I will tell you that they're a little stricter in their rules right now than cities and other spaces tend to be. The hatchery is also state-run and not anticipating letting people back for a lot longer than maybe some of the rest of us are. But we will come back and add a quick information update on that, on any conversations that have gone on between the state park. Great idea for live theater, great idea for the drive-in movie, could be a great idea for lots of different things that we'll think of, but we are so lucky to have that in our backyard. So we'll definitely come back with some information. Thank you. We are at the end of our allotted time. It always goes way faster than I think it's going to. Jared, Rob, thank you. It was absolutely fascinating to hear what recovery looks like and the challenges and hurdles you're facing, your financial situations, your thoughts and plans for the future. Appreciate it very much. We're hoping to keep the task force informed with real stories that they can hear from businesses in Issaquah. And thank you, task force members. You never cease to amaze me with your questions and your suggestions. Thank you for serving, and I will see you at our next meeting on July 23rd. Have a great night. Bye, Grace.
Bye.